Hey, I'm waiting for Larry. Hey, Larry. I think I pressed accept, and you should be able to join. Yeah, now we can see each other. How are you? Thank you for joining me. This is my first live that I'm doing, so I'm excited. Or first live with another person. I'm excited to meet you and to talk to you about Andy Warhol and how he inspires your art and maybe other artists that inspire you.
Yeah, right on.
So I first noticed you because you had that Andy Warhol inspired um, piece where you said it's on his Instagram. If I could learn how to share images, I would share it. I'm new to this too, so it says "bastard son of a gun," interface, suit, Brillo pads, tight lip, and you can. Oh, I'll read the whole thing. Tight lip. You are thrilled. You knew that your list of products were truly the American dream. Um, I'd love to know uh, your process, why you choose different people to showcase, and everything.
Okay. Well, like Andy, I think that across the board, TV, magazines, Instagram, popular icons, music, and all that is the leveling field of culture. Everything influences culture, not just the art world. So that's my subject matter, and in a lot of ways, Andy is a core to that idea. Uh, of incorporating those things you normally wouldn't see celebrated sometimes into a point of celebration within art and appreciation. Uh, so it's a hybrid of things. And, Andy back in the day, before he got to be a fine artist, he was a graphic designer, advertising marketer, that kind of thing. And he was into the business in the very beginning, which is, advertising touches on more than just the art world. It's the general population of people to make sales. Yeah. And that's the business end of, art and business for him.
Yeah. I don't know why, like, the idea of, like, I know I have an app that is supposed to help encourage people to buy, but I don't like the idea of artists thinking to sell. Like, art to be art made for consumerism. Um, Even though, like, on the opposite end, you need money. There's nothing wrong with needing money, but, like, I do think that is, like, from in our history and the past of art, like, it seems like the people who sold the loudest were the most prominent. Um, so I don't know. Um,
Yeah, that's
does that
true.
have does that have something? I mean, do you have any opinion on, like, money and art, and does that impact what you're doing at all?
Well, there's the art world, and then there's the world of art. And the people that aren't invited into the club of the art world, they're still artists. They're in the world of art within making, So they're like a fringe dweller in some ways, because they can't get invited into the exclusive club of the art world because of maybe of sales and so forth, It's, Sotheby's, I was watching an auction the other day on YouTube, and the money that these people are getting. A lot of the people that make it into the art world go through this cronyistic system of, well, starts off of academia, the appropriate art school, which is kind of like a, I don't know, in terms of baseball, it's kind of like a farm school for the art world. And so, they're grooming their artists for potential, maximization of commodity from the very beginning of, these graduate programs. And then after that, they make it into the local museums and local galleries. And it depends on what locale it is. It could be, if it's LA or New York, then you find yourself moving into the upper echelon of collectors, perhaps, Of course, the highest paid artwork is from those that are, perhaps dead, like a Francis Bacon, of course, and Basquiat. Those are the most, biggest investments anyways. So, coming to terms with that, because in terms of economics, and when you are a fringe dweller like me, you've probably had to work a job on the side, and that job would probably have to be full-time, and it probably might not be in line with making art. And then you come home with whatever energy you have left, and you go about trying to make art, and also marketing your own art and showing your own art. So, over a period of time, I became kind of like not that invested in that whole system, even though I have a Master of Fine Arts from Vermont College, which is kind of like another fringe operation. But nonetheless, it allowed me to have the credentials to teach on a college level. But yeah, it's economics, for me is the idea of, I like to coin the phrase relational aesthetic, where I take a different approach towards selling my work. My work, which is primarily paintings right now, is $300 across the board, big or small. And I sell it through Facebook. If someone comments on the work, I immediately message them, making a deal. So it opens up the spectrum of audience. I sold a couple paintings and got commission on a painting to this lady. I guess she was like around 70 in Virginia. That was the first time ever buying a painting. She bought it from me, and she commissioned me to paint her son holding a trout, fish that he just caught. And that's kind of like what it's like for me anyways. But that's my own device. To get online and message someone, it takes a level of audaciousness in a way. But if you do break that ground, then you create a relationship, and that relationship for me has lent itself to collectors.
I love that. I always love seeing the artists discuss with the collector. There's something like powerful between the financial supporter and the artist. And there is something very beautiful about that. But I did want to talk to you about your byline. You call yourself Voodoo White Trash. What does that mean to you?
Well, yeah. Wow. It started way back in the 90s. And at that time, I was doing more conceptual kind of stuff where I would collect people's clothes, old clothes, wash them, and then wrap them around sticks. And they had this kind of primitive quality, and there were sculpture. And then I started decorating them. So this kind of like hybrid of the culture where voodoo came from and my own trailer trash culture too, coming together with that, the two of those, And And of course, when I went into get my Master of Fine Arts, they looked at that and they looked at me and they're like, "You're really not African American. You know that, right?" So, but that term has kind of stuck with me for a while. And there for a while, I was doing these T-shirts with these little rubber duckies on the front, like you'd find at a carnival. Then I just randomly put voodoo white trash over it, and there was just kind of like a certain question or mystery about it that sold a lot of T-shirts. I own a gallery now, and it's called the Black Dog Art Gallery, and I just love the mystery of that idea. What's the black dog? Well, there's many depths to that culturally, what the black dog could represent. For me, it is another idea of being a fringe dweller. And also, the idea of voodoo, a hybrid of voodoo and white trash is that kind of fringe idea too. It's a hybrid of things versus just the binary idea of just that singular idea.
Where are you from?
I was raised in North Carolina, the mountains of North Carolina, and in '85 I moved to Asheville, North Carolina, which at the time was less gentrified, and there was downtown. There was a lot of these amazing empty spaces that you could rent for almost nothing. I had a studio space once upon a time for $40 a month, and I met a lot of artists that were doing a similar thing downtown Asheville, North Carolina, that is. And over a period of time, there was a collective of people that I started kind of hanging out with, partying and collaborating with, and yeah. So that's kind of like it was the springboard for me in terms of just having having artists that are more mature, but took me under their wing, and just and we started doing projects together, stuff like that. Yeah.
So let me get this straight. So you moved to Vermont for art school. Then are you back in North Carolina, or are you still up in the Northeast?
Well, from in the top of 2000, I moved to San Diego from Asheville. I met my wife online. We fell in love. And my first airplane trip was flying straight to San Diego and meeting her at the airport. And over a period of time, I decided just to move to California. Yeah, so we lived in San Diego from the top of 2000 to 2020. Currently, I'm living in Tubac, Arizona, where we've retired.
I've heard good things about Arizona's art scene. And then earlier you talked about, elite areas for the art world. And I would consider San Diego an elite area of the art world and some parts of Arizona. But I would love to know your perspective of that.
Yeah, for me, being this French dweller, I had to make, art happen in the context of my own condo. We bought a condo, and 1,100 square feet plus a 2-car garage, and the bonus, 2 parking spaces. So we had the parking spaces covered. So I turned the garage into a local gallery, which we'd have exhibitions every month, sometimes more just about objects, but sometimes more about performance art or sound art, or we'd have a video night. We curate videos, and into the idea of the paradox of videos, where performance art ends up being edited into a video. And so I did that for running 12 years ongoing, and providing basically a conduit for the community. It was something for somebody they could look forward to do once a month, a party, looking at art, and sometimes selling art. But yeah, there was a lot more experimental art going on then than there are currently now in this gallery, but I'm going to be opening that up too eventually.
I do love, this has been a running theme of my own week, of discussions on the community that we build with art, and the dialogues and discussions that we build and the connections that we build with art. I guess I bring this up again because, you were talking about voodoo being an African-derived mythology, and how that connected to you and your upbringing as you call it, white trash. But I feel like that's something I'm not allowed to say, or it might be not appropriate for me to say, so like of humble beginning. And like I do love that art like can be this bridge of communication where you can talk to people about something that you might not feel you would not be given the space to feel comfortable about bridging those worlds.
Right.
And so I guess you're starting anew in Arizona versus San Diego, where you're building a new group of people to come together to talk about something new. And how is that going? Like, I guess basically starting afresh and bringing it together.
Well, it's been a system of economics. We got kind of squeezed out of San Diego, and gentrification going on, the redevelopment of things, and just the dire poverty of the homeless population. It was just, and nothing was being done about it. Also, our immediate crazy neighbors that we could deal with. So, and also, I got laid off from my teaching job, which was full time. And then my wife was just really stressed out about that, and because she's in restaurant management. And one day we just looked at each other and said, let's just get the fuck out of here, and just, let's put this place on the market. And at the time, her brother and his family had a place out here and still do. And we'd visit on Christmas and 4th of July. And I just love the space in terms of, coming from Asheville, and if we compare it to here, there's a similar spatial signature. There's more space, the air is cleaner, which was perfect for me, having chronic asthma. And so when we moved here, moved here, it was the very beginning of our retirement plus the pandemic, okay? So that was a certain limitation. Even though I had I converted our garage into a studio, and I was painting every day. I still am. At one point, I decided to create my own gallery. So we have property, like 3/4 acres of property, which have mesquite trees. So I started stringing clothesline from tree to tree, and all my canvases are unstretched. I just stack them. So I started hanging them up on the clothesline with clothespins, and people would drive by and look, and I think it kind of ruptured the reality. I'd never see anything like that. And they would stop, and immediately that first day of doing it, I started selling work right out of my yard, or bartering, for labor and things like that. So at that point, along the way, I was constantly selling work through Facebook by making relationships, by messaging people and talking to them about the work and then selling the work. And they'd pay me through PayPal, and then I would just roll up the canvas and stick it in a tube and ship it to them. It was a very basic idea. But it was like it was other half of my income outside of the Social Security. And it was very consistent, very consistent. Actually, I sold a lot of work during the pandemic through that system of social media and the front yard. We call it the front yard gallery, basically.
It's so beautiful. And I do have pictures of this. I can't wait till we have a writer, Anna, and I can't wait to see like what she writes. It will be like an amazing story. I've never heard of some backyard or really front yard gallery, and I would love to see images of that, or even video of like cars passing by and what I can just imagine. That's so it seems like you have history for people to just make art a problem.
Well, it really kind of started when I was getting my Master of Fine Arts, and the faculty there and my direct research person kind of pushed me more into performance art, and through performance art, because I was like, one of the pieces that was critiqued during my session in Vermont, which was more of a spa program where I would be there at a residency for like twice a year and within a window of 10 days each period. I did a performance at the Department of Motor Vehicles where I set up a little stage. It's kind of like a mini nightclub act where I would sing and tell jokes as people were going on the DMV. And I would lay canvas down on my little stage and put paint on my tennis shoes and dance to James Brown as they passed by.
That's just what
And
DMV. Like, there's nothing.
yeah,
Think to yourself, like, I'm going to the DMV. My life can't get any worse. And then you'd see that, and you'd be like, okay, maybe life is a little better.
yeah, yeah. My thesis for my Master of Fine Arts was the artist as the fool. So basically, putting myself in a foolish position, entertaining people, versus making other people the butt of the joke. And that was the catalyst of creating relationships in a direct way. People would see me, and one guy and his kid would step up, and he was offering me dance moves, which was pretty cool. Or people were critiquing my lame jokes and giving me better jokes, And then that moved on into my performance of free advice, where I would, in public spaces, I'd set up a desk and a sign that says free advice with 2 chairs. And someone would sit down and ask me for advice, and it'd be free. So even if it was bad, they couldn't argue about it because it was free, And then it moved on into other performances too that were more about social intervention. You can see a lot of those pieces on YouTube if you just hone in on my name. And then, the idea of when you're videotaping something in live time and space, and then you edit it, it becomes a more modernistic approach, more customized, and again, it becomes a video art. So that's kind of what got into the whole relational thing, wanting to make, acquaintances with people. And along the way, too, reading the book by Nicholas Baudrillard, and his book was literally called Relational Aesthetics. Relational Aesthetics. And he talked about how art forms, drawing, sculpting, performance, and all that can be a bridge to the audience, as opposed to just having one-way communication. You could have more interactivity with that. So with that, I also did a Draw Me project where I'd walk up to random strangers and have them draw me. It really didn't matter whether the skill level was. It was more about sitting there and talking to them as they're drawing me, and then I did a video of that, and other things that involve making connection with people. Sometimes that connection was just allowing them to play along with the idea, within fantasy. And sometimes it was more on a stealth level, if there was something, the antithesis of what I, didn't like, I would, do it in a more covered way and in terms of disrupturing a space or framing a certain idea, doing that. And so, yeah, there's a lot of information out there. If you wanted to look for the Front Yard Gallery, should be a page on there, Front Yard Gallery. My gallery here is called the Black Dog Gallery, and there's a page there on Facebook and also Instagram. And then there's a page on collaboration. YouTube has all the performances for the most part, and more the social interventions, as I would call it. Yeah.
I have seen that, like, and other artists that we have a blog on budgetcollector.org where we meet with artists and we like museum articles about them. And I have seen other people front yard galleries, but there's something very intimidating about that. In like you feel like you just can't walk up to them, and feel like you need to be invited and but
yeah,
or in the opposite end of the spectrum, you like there's some like intimidating, like big stately home neighborhood or small little condo neighborhood. So it's if you're not from that community, it feels hard to just open up and walk to them. But
yeah,
sort of like the idea I had earlier, where you put it in a clothesline. This very untraditional way of having it. It's so different that it's probably jarring into like thinking maybe something.
Yeah, we're breaking up a little bit. I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Right.
But the question is, now when I did this, it was basically near the residential road, that goes to the neighborhood. So they could readily see it. It's right there on the road. So all they had to do is pull up. And then I had a sign that they could honk or call me, and I'd come out and talk to them, from a distance, because it is during the pandemic time. Remember that. And I also did the Yoko Ono wish tree out there where they could tie a wish into the tree, that kind of thing, more interactive. But I see your point. I'd be hard fetched to walk in somebody's yard like that. I thought about, doing it in a more depth area, but that wasn't very successful. So I kept it right there near the road where people were walking by, because we got walkers in the morning, or people driving by, and they could stop and notify me, or email me later. So that's kind of how that worked. Yeah, and it still works that way. I'm still doing that in my front yard, along with the gallery now. Yeah.
And I would like to go back to how you drew people into the space, especially in your San Diego gallery versus here in Arizona, or where you are now in Arizona. Do you feel like communities are different in different areas?
Oh, absolutely. And I'm not going to just assume that I'm going to be readily accepted. Here in Tubac is a village. It's not even a town, but they have an art center that's co-sponsored by the Smithsonian. There's several commercial galleries that you can go, and you'll find horses and Indians and cactuses and landscapes. Mine's a little different, than the rest of them, but it's my own aesthetic too. I don't like just making something to sell. If I can make something I'm really digging and selling it, that's the only way to go for me, and I'm hoping here there'll be a market for it as well, but also, the idea of I do free advice outside, and to create a spectacle will lend itself to creating a buzz, a buzz about the whole experience. So I want it to be not just a retail space, but a space you can have a certain experience in. So yeah, I just started it 3 weeks ago, and I on one wall here, I can show you if this will work. Let's see here. On one wall, I have all of my work. Okay, it's all of my work, and this lends itself to interactivity, where these people coming in would guess who the people are. Everybody knew the jackrabbit, of course, but they would guess who that is, or
Frederick
who
Douglass?
that is. Yeah. You know who that is?
Nance. I don't know.
Tanya Harding.
Yes, I was thinking Nance, the girl who hit Nance.
And that's Henry Miller.
I don't know who Henry Miller is.
He wrote Tropic of Cancer.
Okay.
And this is a famous deceased, unfortunately, musician.
I can't really see it. There's words over my screen on the bottom.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Roy Orbison, and then I got Andy Kaufman, Marilyn Monroe, and then there's Andy, and then Nietzsche. So that kind of, and then over to this wall is our guest wall, where we have 6 different artists from all over the country, positioning themselves in this wall.
Who's the first?
This guy.
It looks
this guy right here. He is from Austin, Texas, and he's schizophrenic, and he's only been painting for under a year. And this is some of the stuff that's conjured up out of his head and out of his hallucinations. But at the same time, it allows him to focus one singular, event or practice. So it's very therapeutic. But at the same time, the work is just amazingly fresh. I love it. And then here is the work of Fred Marinero from San Diego. And he's a Vietnam vet, but he makes these art toys, and he packages them and everything, and he sells them at Comic-Con. All right. And then I'll just go through. Then there's the other work. This guy's from Asheville, North Carolina. This lady is from Detroit.
Beautiful.
This lady is from the eastern part of North Carolina. This gentleman here is from San Diego. And then Bob Ray, which he does amazing drawings. And these, this, and this. On the other side of each one is a format for a postcard. So someone will buy a piece, and he calls it mail art. And I heard it before, MAIL art. And then he'll literally use the postal service to mail the art piece to the person that bought it. And then this work is the work of Debbie Corbell. This is my makeshift pedestal, 2 logs. And so that's what we got going on now. So yeah.
So often I see that all artists are usually the most frequent buyers of other art than non-artists. And I do wonder. I wonder if, like, we're trying to be a collector app that turns art enthusiasts into art buyers. It makes it easier for them to feel the confidence to buy. And I do feel like you have to tap into your creative identity in order to feel comfortable to, like, put art on your wall, that, like, real art, not just like Mama's home cooking sign from Home Goods, but like to put you have to sort of, on our app we call it the artistic quotient. You have to develop your artistic knowledge in order to feel comfortable to buy other people's art and to share in that. And I do wonder, like, I wonder if there's a difference, like, I wonder if it's even possible to buy art without having some understanding of, like, what your artistic identity is. I don't know. I do feel like there's something different between the art buyer and the non-art buyer. Some sort of different identity or characteristics. Yeah, that's the question.
Well, that's a good question, and we can revert back to Andy Warhol, and let's think about his content. It's popular culture that you see from him, even stuff from the newspaper. So that's an immediate window into a bigger audience or population of people. I get people buying stuff like Wicked Witch of the West, or I'll paint a lot of characters from David Lynch films, or paint musicians or historical figures. So there's something for everybody that they can claim as their culture as well. Although, it's not the representational idea of a photograph they're getting, it's a painting. So my paintings are kind of a hybrid of Andy Warhol and Francis Bacon, because there's this idea of the icon that's popular, and then there's the idea of the process that you see that is more of a Francis Bacon, more of a what they call within the Surrealist movement, a biomorphic surrealistic approach with the use of chance. So I always incorporate chance to just kind of break open that image, which is a codified idea like Andy would use. And then the analog idea would be Francis Bacon, where it could be just a swipe across the face with the canvas, something that would disrupt the figure, and then reeling it back in to notify some sense of chance or action against that icon. But yeah, it's the portal of something you recognize. That's why I love figuration. I paint abstractly, but it's more process oriented. But I sell more work that's representational that people can relate to, but also that I relate to as well. I've had my own invested interest within admiration or contempt with all these figures. Some of the figures that are more distorted are usually the ones I have more contempt toward, like, a Trump or a Hitler, or I had this one lady that would commission me to do, and she's more of a Democrat, actually a liberal, but she had the hots for Ted Cruz and John Boehner, and who else was it? And she commissioned me to paint them. So I'm like, there's no way I'm going to make them look all that pretty for you. I'm sorry. Yeah, but she accepted it anyways. So yeah, but yeah, I think it's, you know, and that's the Andy idea too. It's like, you know, something you can recognize or relate to that's part of your own memory and history.
Yeah. And I just I want to touch on the word icon. Like I kept hearing you repeatedly, and to me, when I hear the word icon, I think of like a religious piece, like you know, religious icons. And I guess I wonder if there's some sort of like with painting figures, like celebrated figures. Is there some sort like the types of people who are attracted to that are? I wonder what they get from that. Is there like to put that on your wall? Is there what does that mean to somebody who picks up? You briefly said the John Boehner and Ted Cruz, like she was picking those things, picking them out because she was like attracted to them in a romantic. But I wonder for the other figures why people are attracted to those figures versus others.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, that's easy, you know. There's the fondness of something, you know, like if somebody's collecting one of my Wicked Witches of the West, they grew up with Wizard of Oz, you know. There's the romanticism in it. It's the history of it, and it allows them to reflect on their childhood, perhaps, or you know, or something that really influenced them at a given period of time. You know, emotional memory. You know, emotional memory, and it's the emotions that the image conjures up that's tapped into that history or memory.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. You get my desk. I was wondering if it would pull it down, but I'm not good at this Instagram. I'm never on Instagram because Instagram is a great place to buy art or to see art and to view art, but like it's also this, I feel like this shallow platform where, you know, people take pictures of their most glorious items they have. They edit their photos to oblivion so that they can look, you know, however they view attractiveness to be.
Right.
And it makes me feel bad. So but I still understand like what you're saying about, you know, selling art, that you have to interact on these social platforms that sometimes you might not go on otherwise. I don't know. I'm rambling now, but yeah.
Well, you know, I get definitely more sales through Facebook. Instagram is a shorter period of time, and you know, and text is inaccessible, more inaccessible in Instagram as it is Facebook. You know, it aligns itself with the image, so you can give some kind of notation about why you painted it. You know, Instagram, your notation to whatever is hashtags for the most part, you know, and that's what they look at. So it's more immediate and less informed. And, you know, the bottom line is I don't sell that much work, but I want to maintain that kind of connection for the possibility of it. And I like also, you know, they're doing the real thing now, where if you click on that, you go from studio to studio of other artists, and for the most part, in the process of making something, which I find entertaining. And then there's TikTok. There's a lot of artists on TikTok and a lot of stuff on TikTok. Actually, TikTok, you could argue, is a little more of a democracy in terms of content, what you can put on TikTok versus Instagram. So there's that, you know. Yeah, it's and I totally get what you're saying, and if we talk about, you know, or even TikTok or Instagram, you know, people that photograph themselves, and the majority are women that would, you know, manipulate the image, glorify it, enhance it, you know, and give this projection of themselves, ideal projection in some ways. There's that, you know, or filtering their image, that kind of idea. I don't see many men doing that, you know, every now and then, but not as often as women do it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And also, what's interesting on TikTok, which is kind of entertaining in a weird way, you see like a lot of older women, middle-aged women, you know, dancing, you know, just dancing in their kitchen or whatever, which is kind of delightful in a way, although it can get pretty monotonous because it's, you know, some really bad dancing and a lot of repetition within their dance, you know. There's a few I like to tune in on. But in some of them, there's this one lady I watched. She's about my age, and she's always complaining about her day or talking about her day. And then, in a very deliberate fashion, she'll turn Alexa on and then play music and dance to it. She'll go, Alexa, volume up, and she starts dancing. And then she gets in trouble with TikTok for intellectual property because then the next episode is complaining about that, you know. Or the other day, she accidentally dropped her vape pen into the dumpster, and she had to figure out how to climb in there and pull it back out. Stuff like that. And you'd have to see her to really appreciate what I'm saying. But but there's all kinds of stuff on TikTok. It's really a lot of pranks, which is some are just juvenile and some are pretty clever. That's a variety of stuff, actually. Yeah, and a lot of music, you know, film clips of concerts you've never seen, and a lot of comedians, which is great. And it's a great introduction to a lot of stuff, I think, for people too. And I think the government hates it because it's more of a democracy and it's less censorship in a way going on, less governmental control because it's coming from China. That would be my assessment of it, anyways. But you know,
With
but yeah.
the woman who dropped her vape pen and dances, it seems like you know a lot about her, but do you know her? And I feel like that's really
Right.
cool about social media. It's like it attracts you to spend time and pay attention to people you don't know. When there's
Yeah.
people around you that you could like end up having a real conversation with, end up really getting to know them, have the deep personal, you know, community ties. I feel like these social media platforms, like the way they erodes the community and the community ties that you could have by, you know, just time with your neighbor versus spending more time with people you don't know.
Yeah. That's a good point. You know, and that's a phenomena of social isolation. I found for myself from the very beginning, probably when I started going to college, my bachelor period, was that during the regular semester, fall semester, you know, spring semester, campus would be more populated, but I found myself feeling more lonely, actually. And I think it's a system of numbers where, you know, during the summer semester, there'd be all those rejects that had to make up their credits and all that, like myself. And I got to know people more, you know. There was more intimacy and more conversation being had. And you would think it'd be the opposite, more people, more conversation. But I think the more, like in a city versus a small town, the bigger the number and more social alienation takes place, you know. Here, people come in, we play the guessing game, we have free advice, you know. I have a lot of supportive neighbors that come in and talk. My wife, she makes sourdough bread and she sells it to people in the neighborhood on a regular basis. And so there's more familiarity in a smaller place. On a zoological level, I was observing this study once upon a time, was the question of why, in a consistent manner, do elephants have a herd? You know, why is it always the consistent number in a herd? And the analogy of this individual is that it's mass times volume, which is basically saying the size of something. And what's the most comfortable situation within a community on the size of something. And so that it was explained why, you know, murder of crows is that certain number, or herd of elephants are that certain number. And then he points to the human being in terms of mass and volume, and the most comfortable number is 150. 150. And that's just a theory, but it kind of made sense of my own, personal experiences of living in a small town versus a big city, which I've done both at this point,
That's interesting. Because that's with our app, we're experimenting with what social media means. And so we're planning on launching like community features. And one of them is like group, where we randomly, based on like how you rate, we'll randomly assign you to a group of other people to meet, and you could talk amongst each other. But I interesting people in one group is like thinking of maybe like 7 to be like more intimate, but I guess sometimes 150 is a good number because you're more likely to see people talking at the same time.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely.
Or when you're
I
orange.
think so.
But
yeah, I think so. When I was teaching back in the day, and my class would be like 30 people, right? And I'd break them up into small groups to where there'd be somebody there a little smarter than the next person, and they were more apt to ask questions in a small group when I approached the small group. And about the assignment. Usually it happened in the course of like when I hand out the assignment, and then I'd group them up and they could start doing their sketches and brainstorm about the idea, and they'd get help from their peers, and then I'd come by and the shy ones would be more apt to ask questions like that. Yeah, just by being a smaller group.
what size were your small groups?
Usually 5.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
having just like we were thinking more 7, putting 7 people to each other.
7's okay too. I've used 7. That works just as fine. Yeah, it works good. Yeah.
But then,
Sometimes 7, you'll have somebody spacing out on you though.
yeah. Yeah, if there's like talks and whatever, we'll see. We'll just you just experiment. But I do love when I went to school and you were just forced to be in a group, forced to talk to people that you didn't know, like those kind of, and we don't have that right now. Like the way social media is designed is like you talk to people who you want to know, or like it's like you get in these vacuums where you're only talking to people who are like you, and it just makes you, I feel like, less fantastic. There's like controversies and like hard talk make you a better person, make you thinks I don't know. Even I can't think of it because I'm just in a pool of people who all think alike me. But it would be great to be like sharpened by people who, are intelligent people that disagree with me and having to navigate that.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, but in academics, as the instructor or professor, one of the main objectives is that they know what's due the following week, and they have no excuses in terms of a deadline. So they know that and it's minimizing any kind of possibility of having an excuse. So they know thoroughly what's due, but also it's a built-in support system too. Like they don't get a hold of me, they can get a hold of one of the class members and ask questions too at the same time. Now, within a general community setting, and we are talking about, being isolated by just wanting to be with someone familiar, I understand that in the context of economics and having a job and needing to make a living, where you're working in a place and you're having to work with somebody you absolutely can't stand, okay? But you're having to be there day to day. And, my experience working in a factory, I worked in a factory in Asheville for 10 years. And I was stuck with people that, that they either thought I was gay or weird or whatever. But over a period of time, those kind of people bring out the emotion in you that other people wouldn't, that would just to just reinforce who you are. And by doing that, and if you can live through it, which you have to if you have a job and you're poor, I found I made really great friends with these people, you know, really great friends that was lasting relationships. Yeah.
And you solidify
So,
your identity by being challenged by horrible people. Like, you get to say to yourself, like, so what? You know, these are the bad things you think about me, but I am who I am. So it's, I don't know. It is interesting to not be or exactly like you.
yeah, totally. Yeah. I've kind of been that way all my life from the get-go, living in Newland, North Carolina. And my influences were Queen and David Bowie, Iggy Pop growing up, you know. And I remember even a time they thought I was gay because they thought I wore makeup, and really all it was is Clearasil for my pimples, you know.
Well, this is a great conversation, and I hope that everyone purchases one of your artworks. They're all $300. And I will be in touch, and we'll write an article for our website to have a more permanent, you know, picture of my one. And so, thank you so much
Yeah.
for joining us on Feedback Friday, and I can't wait.
Well, congratulations to you. I got to say, you know, I've done a lot of these, and I've gotten to where I'm not that interested in doing them anymore. But you had some great questions, and I think you did a great job your first time around doing this.
Thank you. Thank you. Because you were charming and talk to you, and you obviously you spent your whole life learning how to communicate with people, creating.
Yeah.
So, thank
Well,
you.
tap into my Instagram, and if there's any paintings you see you might like, I'll make you a deal.
Thank you so much.
Right on.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
All
Bye.
right. Bye-bye.